It is time to continue the seminar, and we have more interesting presentation and a panel to look forward to this afternoon. The presentations before the panel will continue the enlargement of the issues that are at stake here at the European Heritage Label. And one very interesting initiative is the new European Heritage Label Network that was established just recently. And as the next presenter, we have here Gerald Wagenhofer, who's both a representative, I think, of one of the sites, the Imperial Palace Vienna, but also the coordinator of this new network. And Gerald will now share his experiences and outsides to this new initiative with us. Please.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for the introduction. I had interesting work to keep you away from sleep after the lunch break. I will do my best to meet the expectation I've here to have an interesting presentation. I hope I can do that. Yeah, I will start with showing you a little bit about the site itself, the Imperial Palace Vienna. The title is Goes Europe, to explain what we are doing the last couple of years regarding Europe, and I will explain a little bit the story behind. The first thing I will mention, because that is sometimes a little bit irritating for some, they are working together with us first time. The Imperial Palace Vienna, that's the name of the site, but the owner or the representative of the owner is the Burghauptmannschaft Österreich. You can translate that more or less in the team of the castle, which is responsible for the castle itself. So in the former time, it was responsible for the military and the building services for this castle, and the rest, which is remaining, because we are, you know that we are neutral country now. We just have the building side, and the military is just from the past. The organization itself is quite old. The first mention of the head of this organization is from 1434. So we can always say we have a long tradition. First of all, when I go to this site itself, I will a little bit explain you what is the site. You might have seen this picture in the video you saw at the beginning, or in other documents. This is one wing of our site. It's called the New Castle. We took that because it shows, it gives a good impression of the site itself. But what is also here, we have quite a large site we're talking about. You see that this is an old map about the area. Usually there is a no, not a red one. Yeah, right. So usually I start to explain at that corner. Here is a very famous museum included. It's called the Albertina. Goes here about. It's called Stahlburg, the Federal Chancellery. This is the People's Park. That is the National History Museum. That's the Museums Quarter. That's the Art Historian Museum. That's the so-called Castle Park. And here we're back to that. This area is the site which got the label. And the second thing we had at the beginning, a little bit struggling when we was mentioned in the European side, it was mainly the Imperial Palace. And I said, sorry, at least there are 3 Imperial Palaces in Europe. We own the second one in Innsbruck as well, and the third one is, I think, in Bozen or in Meran. I think it's Bozen. It's South Tyrol, some would say Italy. We don't have fully aware of how many are there, so that's the reason why we always say it's the Imperial Palace Vienna, to make it clear on that side. When we started to submit or we get in contact with the label itself, the first impression was, okay, do we have a look on our site itself, how we can find it in the internet? What you really find was the Congress Center, which is located there. They are quite famous, and the email address, the web address is, I think it's Hofburg minus Vienna, so it's very present. Of course, our federal president, which also has his offices there, is present. It's also present one of the museums, which also have an address with Hofburg. This is related also to the Habsburgs because it's the Sissi Museum as well. This was the three users, we call it, which were represented if you search for Hofburg in the internet. But there are also others. The Nature History Museum, as I said, Albertina, the Spanish Riding School, which is an UNESCO World Cultural Heritage Site, or not site, it's... thank you for helping me. The art historian, we have the National Library in the building, and we also have the Museums Quarter, which is since around about 25 years one of the famous art and culture centers in Vienna, and it's also well recognized on European level. And of course, we are in that building as well as Burghauptmannschaft, and we also have our colleagues from the Federal Monument Protection Office there. So quite a lot, a big site, quite a lot of users. But if we start with that, we said, okay, if you search for the Imperial Palace, you did not know what's belonging to it and how big it really is. So we started to collect data, and we also tried to make that clear in our application. This is one site together. There are some figures which explain our site. We mentioned it, the Burghauptmann mentioned it a little bit too much, too directly, the 700 years. He said the last 700 years, and I asked him, and what about the last 100 years where we are a democracy? Okay. He mentioned the 700 years until 1918. And this was... also, we discussed it in the lunch break. Of course, one of the famous Habsburg we had at that time, which makes us, because one of the remarks was from the panel, that the Imperial Palace rules Europe for a long time. They make some decisions in that building which has an influence on other countries and other parts of Europe. And for instance, Maria Theresia was the most famous and sustainable Habsburg in our sense, because she introduced that all the children have to go to school, independent of the gender. She introduced the land register, not only in Austria, even we found it in Croatia, in Hungary, in Slovenia, in Czech, and so on. They have participated, they're still using things which are introduced at that time. We have around about 20 million visitors, but we include all the people they are running through the castle itself, because it was always part of the city. So some Viennese people would never realize when they go through the area that they pass or the crossing the Imperial Palace as well. So there's still a task for us to make them aware of where they are running through, sometimes really running. And it's included in that figure. We have around about 6 million visitors in the museums we had in that area. So we're talking about, as you see, 16 museums, and I call that together with the Museums Quarter. So that's quite a large number. If you compare, for instance, Berlin, the Berlin Museums in Ireland always say we are proud of 8 museums so far I know. You see, we have the double number, but we don't talk about it. So that's our challenge here. We had the discussion about should we award religious sites as well. In our sites we include also 6 churches and chapels, which are part of the building. So the Habsburger had their own monastery in the building, so that they had not to go too far, because he was a Catholic emperors, so they had not to far to the next churches. We're talking about 240 square meters used by offices, flats, and other users. We have 19 wings in that building. We talk about 70 yards, 2,500 rooms. And a former Burghauptmann said, in his 16 years of being head of the organization, it was not even possible for him to go in all the rooms we have. And I think the actual one would say the same. We're talking about 12.5 million books and library objects which are in that building. We have at the moment 72 Lipisans, so horses in the Imperial Palace. We have 61 collections. Of course, that was a major change we had after we applied for the label. The Austrian Parliament moved in the Imperial Palace because the original building was not refurbished for 100 years, so they had a real need to do something. And then they had the decision to say, okay, do we go outside of Vienna or in a suburb and moving all the offices we have? And they said, no, that's not possible. We will go in the Imperial Palace using one wing for the planetary meetings and so on. And therefore we had a lot of changes in that time, even who is using what room. And it was a challenge to manage that because, of course, they are totally new members and they had no idea in what area they are and what they can do and what they are not allowed to do. Because if you're a member of a parliament, you never really accept that you can't go through open door, which is open, and on the other side, you know there's an entrance as well, where you can go to your office. But it disturbed, of course, other users, so we had to deal with that topic as well. We have 59 Burghauptmänner or counts, and where I have to look, we had one countess for 3 years. But to be honest, I'm very sure when I read the table of this head of the organizations, it was just that the emperor was living in Innsbruck at that time, and he didn't realize that the count was dead. And she take over and did it. And after 3 years, he might realize there's a countess now doing the work, and he announced a new one. That's, I have to be honest, if I read that, that was my impression. We had 3 democracy facilities in that area. The federal president, the federal chancellor, and now the parliament. So all the state, the highest state organs are in the Imperial Palace. Which helps us, of course, with youth and democracy, because they had an own workshop for democracy, where they are organizing tours for children and youth as well. And at least we have some studies about when we invest or we use €1 for the building, for the site, we had an added value of around about 6.7 euros by spending this €1. This includes taxes and incomes and from tourists and so on. And we had 19 ballroom events per season. I counted that for that upcoming period. Maybe there's a little bit more or less in the next year or was in the past. When we submitted also, we thought about how we can develop the site. Because there is one, the major topic was governance. Who has the final governance for that building? It's quite big, had a lot of users, but this was very much clear. Because the Burghauptmannschaft is the landowner, is in the land register, and he is the one who is serving this building with the facilities that they are good in shape. So we really said, okay, that's too much animated. At the beginning we had, oh, this was too much. When we submitted, there was no perceiving, there was nothing, nobody perceived that as one side. It was separated in several sides. So the idea was that we will be able to have an appearance as one side, yeah, maybe 2020, so in a quite short period of time. And the end is, the idea is that we had a brand, which is the Imperial Palace Vienna as a city in the city. The point is that the palace was always part of the city. I was mentioning that the people are running through, so it was always open, and you not really realize that it is that you are in the palace. City in the city, because we have a lot of functions which you have usually in a city, we have in the building as well. So this is the idea of having a brand which is city in the city, which is the base for all the other brands you see, art history, natural history museum, and so on. When we discuss that, we see that we have a cultural heritage area and we have a communication area. So we have a lot of topics in that part we can communicate and work on. We have a researching area because the Hofburg is part of, or the Imperial Palace is part of some research project, and some other researchers are going on. Museums, libraries, even ourselves. It's a commercial area. Got a lot of businesses in there. I'm not calling only the museums, or also other things. We had a living area because people are living, have flats in the building. It was the former story about the ladies, the widows of the old public clerks. When they died, they are widows and they still live in the building. It's not that dramatic anymore, but it's still that we, I think, have around about 40 flats in the building. They are used, and the contracts are very long-lasting. So even we try to rearrange that, because of course you can imagine if you have the flats separated in all wings, you get maybe troubles with the other users. Hoppala, this was too much. Wrong direction. Yeah. We have a natural area, of course, the parks, and we even have butterflies in the building. We have a museum of butterflies, so also some interesting parts. It's a leisure area because you have parks to be there, a learning area, even a creative area, so we submitted us as a creative hub. And we also have a gaming area. This gaming is interesting because one of the major positioning of the Imperial Palace, one is clear, that's the important, forgetting the word, imponieren, impose. I think it's to impose. Yeah, impressive. So that you are going on the knees if you see the high and the state halls and so on. And even the games was happening there. If you have night tournaments, it was also in that building. The question area, this one, is about you like to go to the Imperial Palace and see what's hidden there. And so that's the main focus when we do the guided tours. We transfer that also, that we say the same, it's not only an area, it's also related to the court, to the first part of the name of Hofburg. I will get the signature that I'm too slow with that what I'm talking. When we see the successes we had in the last year, the first thing we introduced a user board, which gave us the possibility to talk with all our users on a regular basis, which was not happening before. This led us to the joint development and implementation of the guiding system, a physical one, that we really decide in the user board how we do it. We also had the chance to realize a new visitor information center. And the funny thing is, you know how long the Imperial Palace exists, but the first visitor information center is now 1.5 years old. We was never be able to introduce that because there was always anything which avoid us for implementing it. We implemented the guided tours to the hidden spot. We have submitted some EU projects just to be to support our EHL project, but also other tasks we had for the Imperial Palace. We realized an education academy for dealing with maintenance of the historic building. A follow-up project is the Pro Heritage is on Horizon 2020 project, and we successfully submitted and now coordinating the EHL at network, the network of the EHL sites, and therefore I was also mentioned as network. No, it was a different thing what you said to me. I forget it. It was just a new name, but I also get a new hat I had now. So we started when we get the award in 2016 to thought about how we can go further. So this is just an overview about what we did. The first submission of the network project was already 2016. It was not successful, but we learned a lot about that, and we organized and we discussed it a lot more the second time. We did that now 2019. We had a start point, September, October 2019. It starts with the EHL days. We had there, for the short or a brief announcement of that meeting, quite a lot side present at Brussels. So from that point of view, I was quite happy. I hope Jutta will join me in that view on that meeting. Where's member in the project? We have a member of the network and we have associate member. So you see here the partner sites which are really working in the project and have also had some budget in the project. It's the two Austrian sites, it's Hambach Castle, the both sites which are running the Treaty of Peace Treaty of Westphalia, thank you. The Union of Lublin, which is also very active in EU projects, and the others you see as well. I won't go through that in detail. We also have associate partner, which tell us they will support the project work, but they are not included in the application as a partner who gets money for the project. And the other sides we still invite to join us, and we still have the question from some side, can we be an associate partner after the submission? So there's a question which still is on Jutta's side, because we have to decide how we deal with them. Official ones or maybe non-official associate partner, but I have to talk about the correct term, how we call them. What we will do, the first thing is that we will strengthen the network, so that we don't start with projects which are related between 2 or 3 sites. We think it's more important to have the base, to have a common ground we stand on. And this is the first topic that we have to establish and develop and establish the appropriate framework for the network. After the first discussion, our partner asked us to open an association by Austrian law, and they was asking me why I don't want it. I said that's not the point of wanting. I just not saying that we have to do it. You tell me that I should do it, then we will do it. That's the way we try to do that network as well. I think we need some support about the corporate design and even the label of the EHL. It's not very common. You see, I think we discussed that there is a lot of work needed to make the label really visible. And we have a European level, we have the site itself, they have their own work with the label, and between them now we have the network. But still we don't have the regions. So we might still have a need to close that gap by further activities which help us to disseminate and the label itself and improve the brand. The website is just a normal thing. What we also have in our mind, we have some working groups that we have specific topics we work on. So we will have the topic of the story of the EHL site, what story we are telling as an EHL site level, or as EHL label site, and also as a network. We're also discussing about values we represent, because most of us, when we talk about values, we rely on that what we get from the panel. And even that is sometimes not so clear for the sites that they can really express firsthand, these are the values we support. And I think this we have to close as well. We also work about special topics about maintenance of buildings, restoration of collections. We also have included in the working groups. If a site coming up with an idea for a project, we'll sit together, discuss it, and then we make proposals how we can go on with that project. We also talked about that we will have internal support for the monitoring, because the old sites mentioned it's a quite a challenge to do it. So we was thinking about maybe we can help each other because the main problem we have in between the sites, we are on the one hand is the advantage is that we are very diverse, but on the other hand we also have a very big variation in the organizational capacity. So I would say we as the Imperial Palace are quite I think we are the biggest in that round, except the city of Lublin, if you call everything. But still, we have our own challenges. I was asked by a member of the panel to do things with youth and children's. And I have to admit, that's not so easy as she thought, because we are public administration office, which is responsible for the maintenance of the building. So we have a budget which is fixed for specific topics. So if we change that for things which are not related to that, we have to explain it. So for this, it helps us very much that we have the label, because we have an argument, but we still have to make some papers to define that we will use the money for that. So it's not always so easy as it sounds in the beginning. What else we have? We also have planned that we at least have one meeting per year to come together and to network and to talk about the actual or the current status. This year it was the label days in Brussels. For next year we have still some discussion where it will happen. I think we talked about, but we did have not include that in that first application for the network to go for exchanges, staff exchanges, but also for exchanges of art and artists. The thing is that we said we will go for a separate funding for this special tasks as well. What else? I think that most of the thing I already discussed. Yeah. So I'm running through the last slides. I think I was then a little bit too fast for regarding the timetable. I hope I was able to show you a little bit about the site, a little bit about the network, and if you have some questions still, we can do it now, even, or we should wait for the panel. We do both. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. This was all extremely interesting, and I'm sure there are questions. And this network is a great initiative for the existing sites, and also interesting for the future sites. Do you have any direct questions to Gerald now? Please.
Anna Lyra-Seppänen from Finnish Heritage Agency. Thank you for an interesting view to Vienna. I'd like to know if you have done some research on your visitors after the EHL status, asking about how do they consider the Imperial Palace more as a national monument of Austria, or more like pan-European site? What's your experience?
To be honest, we did not such a study at the moment. To be honest, I think it's first for the Austrians it will be a national monument. I'm quite sure about that, because if you're aware of the building itself, then you see it as part of the Austrian history first. Maybe Austrian-Hungarian history, so we are quite open for that. But it's still, I think, the pan-European view is not so much present. This is our work. When we start this guided tours for the children's, and at the moment I do it mainly. The first of all, I mentioned these tours are just happening because we had the Siegel, the label. Sorry, that's the basic that we are working at that topic. Otherwise, we won't do it. We won't show this importance as well. But still, if we talk with the visitors, would talk with the visitors of the museums, they are not really aware of that, because another challenge you see, we have a lot of users. They can use it, they are informed about it, but if you go and see what they really do with the label, the organization are not really aware of that. So we still have the challenge to make them clear. You have a big brand like the Art Historian Museum, but still we can support that with the European heritage label as well. But this is still a challenge for us, for ourselves.
Just add a couple of words to it about the visibility, because we from the EuroHerit project, we were actually asking the visitors, is it for you a national, local, regional, European heritage? Or
Why haven't this
I mean,
study?
in the 11 sites where we were not now at the Hofburg in Vienna, and it was quite interesting to see. I mean, they were usually connecting it with the exhibition of the site. And sometimes they were saying, oh, it's more local, and then it was again a bit more national, then again European. It wasn't always very clear. I mean, it depended on how they were seeing it, but then they were thinking more about what is, for instance, what could be European heritage. So that was also one of the questions we were asking. And then they started, like opening up. But it's also not the site's complete task of saying this is now European heritage. But you will see that European heritage actually has different levels and different scales. And it depends a little bit, from the individual to the individual, how they are kind of interpreting it.
It sounds like you interview a typical Austrian.
Thank you very much. And we will be moving on to the next question. There will be more possibilities to discuss during the panel. We have another site presentation or a view to a site from Krista Sarv, Acting Director of Research and Head of Collections and Research Department at the Estonian History Museum. And Estonia has two European heritage label sites, and the Guildhall is one of them. And Krista will now share her thoughts with us on this site. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm very glad to be here. And as introduction was, I am a research director, and my connection with this heritage label is maybe quite accidental or something. Oh, sorry, it's afternoon, Friday afternoon. I am just a little bit tired, but I try to speak correctly. Our label site is Great Guildhall. It's actually part of the History Museum. And big problem for us was to deal with the Great Guildhall as site, as it before was here, that we're dealing no institution, no museums, but sites. And in Estonian History Museum, Great Guildhall even isn't in branch. It's just one of the two buildings. There are no special team for working with this building. And that's why I say that I am here just by chance, because when this heritage label was created, and we were one of the first four, and then was the ideology of this networking that it's as one family, and it's very good that there are same faces in this meeting. And that's why it just happened that I was in the first meeting, and now I somehow dealing with this label. We have no special officer of this thing, and the work of this heritage label is done by side of among other works. But it was introduction and explanation. And I must explain it that we Estonians are quite pragmatical view of life, and that's why maybe my report is maybe a little critical, but of course it's a self-criticism that first to see, and second, of course, the criticism of this the whole system. And I promised to myself to speak honestly, but to be stay as spoiled. Actually, we are labeled since 2014. Short timeline of our building, the Great Guildhall. It started for 15th century, and it was headquarter of the Tallinn's the most influential merchants guild, the Great Guild, which started in somewhere in the 13th century. And actually this building functions as this club, like house till 19th century. When the medieval times, it was somewhere closed, for closed society, only this wealthiest elite people of citizens of Tallinn. And modern times it was more open for the public. In beginning of the 20th century, it became some kind of stock exchange institution, and after the Soviet occupation in 1940, there was 12 years of wine and lemon factory, actually, this history. And in 1952, then it became the property of Estonian History Museum. And for this time, it's the main places of our exhibition. Our first floor was for the exhibitions, and in cellar there was collection rooms and cabinets. And 2008 becomes a big renovation works, renewing. We just moved collection out. We opened to visitors our cellars and make quite new permanent exhibitions. Spirit of Survival, 11,000 years of Estonian history. How do we reach to this label? Actually, in year 2030, 2012, we don't know nothing about heritage label. But in our cultural minister, there are coordinator of European affairs, and he success said that we must try to apply with this level, and we have one donkey patient colleague who started to fulfill this application, and it succeed. There is no, as you understand, no pre-choices, pre-competition in country inside, but the choice to present our building is quite logical, because in 2000 and after the opening of building, we are some kind living very full, very good. All spotlights are turning to us. We have got the best development award in Estonia, the best exhibition, the best scientific achievement. All local, more important awards are coming to us. And 2013 we got the nomination of EMEA. And of course this building was under the protection of local heritage sites. And this is a quite good basis to go further arena. And second aspect, maybe too important why to go this label thing, was that in this time, 2013, there are our medievalists, scientists are making a little bit revolution of these approaches. They started to view local processes as a part of bigger process, European processes. This is this historical knowledge, and does make some changes for wider explanation. For example, in our historical approach is beginning of the 13th century is the milestone of our history, the last glorious thing. This is the battle of independence against these German crusaders. And now it's no anymore this battle of independence, but this all was one event among these Nordic crusades, and this is a very good starting point for dealing with this European context. I don't know how hard, how many years of blood there was for this application, but we got it to 2014 with the Peace Palace of Hague, this Roman time archaeological site of Austria, and in Netherlands, Camp Westerbork got it to 4 very different sites, and you can read this again, this explanation why Great Guild Hall is the most important thing in Europe, the place. Of course, it's some kind of level of this verbal, how to say, demagogy. And this is but it's not lying, of course, for the application. Further than I was these Brussels meetings, there are new sites are introduced, and I have a little bit hobby to write these reasons to this European democracy. I just lost this my notes. There's quite a funny thing. Okay, that's some I made just stupid joke about this. Okay, the reason why. Only 2 extra questions. The biggest question was the exhibition, The Will of Survival, 11,000 years of Estonian history. This is a very local. And the second exhibition was The Power of Light. This means the history of this building, history of Hanseatic merchants, and this is a European thing. So, and there are 2 questions about it, how this exhibition reflects this European values and how it connected with the events of European events. And this is exhibition is general exhibitions exhibition. Our visitors, 75% of our visitors are tourists, and the Great Guild Hall is located in the middle of Old Town, very accessible, and even if you don't want to go to the museum, but in Estonia weather is worse than in Helsinki and Finland, you want to go to warm. It's very accessible to that. And that's why I think it's one reason for our high foreign visitors rank. And that's why we made this the concept of this exhibition is to give these events that that is worldwide. For example, first this is not a traditional exhibition. We have a chronological. We don't give a chronological approach, but we are asking questions that maybe. If you first time come to Estonia, then you ask at who are Estonians, how many powers they have, so on. But in the answers with this question, we use worldwide events, for example, Christianity, world wars, and that makes us connect with this European worldwide events. And that was our answer, and I think it was satisfactory for Commission. Great success. We got this label in, and as I said, we were first 4, and of course we have some hopes. As I told, we don't know what this label means. It was new for everybody, and I think that our hopes was through this label get more fame. It means that to belong some European tourist route or to get more tourists, and of course to get closer to honeypot. And we're hoping that via this label there are some special founding projects or something like that. And there are our 2 big hopes. As I said, we are pragmatic view of life. And what label hopes, as we understand in the year 2014, it means that it seems that this is some kind of alternative to UNESCO list, and through this label wants some more fame too. And that's, as I said, the concept of the meeting, and was to be one happy family. And we have some company of some group of people which know each other and easy to talk and discuss and change experiences and so on. And this is the third task, what we think Europe wants for these hopes. But life under this label, no dramatically changes. There are several meetings. Some of them was, as maybe say that is some kind of tourism too. But I actually remember 2 meetings. One of them was 2016, I think. I'm archaeologist, and very hard to view back to the recent events, and in Budapest, Hungary. Then I think there are 10 or 15 sites for this time. And it was the first time, maybe 2 years after this existence, that people ask, we all understand this physical and philosophical meanings of label, but what is the practical meaning of this label? And there was arranged quite good word coffee workshop. We had some tasks to solve. First task was to find some common theme for this group of people or site. What is 1 or 2 common things that we can build these activities? And actually, we found only 1 common thing. We all recognize that in somehow we dealing with monument, physical monument. It's a building, it's some paper document, and important for this monument is a question of preserving, of conservation, and everybody found that if this heritage label can give some support of this conservation and preserving theme, it's quite good achievement too. Second task was to find some common educational, some ideas for a common educational programs. Result was 0 ideas. because everybody recognized that we are dealing very different matters and different time scale periods, and it's very hard to do something, and nobody want to do project just for a project. This must be some practical exploration for the science. And the main question that rise with this meeting was, is heritage label European tourist route? Okay. Is it this network of specialists? And this question doesn't have an answer, because the expectations was quite different. And the second meeting was in Krakow, 2018 maybe, yes. And then was the second time we're dealing with identity problems. And there was speakers were in two groups. One of group is that everything was okay, and this some brainwash liking pitches of how this heritage label works with the European identity and so on. And second group was that we are we're based in the wrong basis, because the value of Europe is diversity, and there are problems with this structure of label, and must do something, some drastic steps to make this label visible, because the second part is this label isn't visible. Okay, but reality for us, what is changed? Fame. I think it's not our visitors stay after the opening of the new building, new exhibitions the same. Average 15,000 visitors, 75% of tourists. Reason maybe why the label physically is weak, because as you said, we have quite strong brands for Estonians. There's a label of local heritage site. Then this very important is this museum award, this so-called museum rat, that we bring home with this building. And there are different sites as label of the best design that we have too. And for this label is unknown. Actually, we don't do anything that grows this label, the knowledge about this label. After this, when we are receiving, we have one press release, have a press release. Yes, press release. And in the local news have two little story. And the second reason, or third or fourth reason that the label is leaked, as you see, this is in Estonian. And as I said, Estonians have stronger labels, and foreign quest doesn't understand what is written here. This is our purpose, succession to this leading board that changed this international language. No need local language. Moneypot is a little bit closer. There is last year was this European Heritage Storage application. We didn't cut it. Maybe the term was a little short, but maybe we done enough. Maybe. But I think that this is a critics, and now we must end some positive notes. I think that actually we are glad that we have this label, because it helps for us to focus our activities in Great Guildhall, to keep it more middle-age centered, to make exhibitions, what I was speaking about, this medieval past, European past, and our form is now changing. Was changed. We were State Museum, and now we have State Foundation. It means not leaded by director, but leaded by council, and there are members of council as businessmen and so on. And if some crazy day council decide that we must do some sexy bungee jumps, then this label is very big protective shield to us. That we must continue our research and for scientific and this immediate activity, or this whatever medieval ways toward the medieval phase. And that's it shortly. I just maybe, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will move on to the final presentation before our panel by Saulis Rimas, who is from Kaunas City Municipal Administration. Here to present another site which leans more towards modern architecture than our previous example did. So please, Saulis.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Saulius Rimas. I come from Kaunas, Lithuania. Well, we should pronounce it as Lithuania in English in correct way, but I do not like it, so let's keep it Lithuania, okay? My background is history and cultural heritage preservation or safeguarding. And thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Kaunas expertise, let's say, in this EHL field. Okay, so Lithuania joined EHL. Oh, I just said Lithuania. Oh, sorry. Okay. Once again, Lithuania joined EHL initiative in 2011. Our national coordinator is the Ministry of Culture. And in 2015, the European Commission officially designated Kaunas of 1990-1940 with EHL badge. So far, Kaunas is the only Lithuanian EHL site. Now let's talk about more what is that Kaunas of 1990-1940s. Kaunas is the second largest city in Lithuania, and second to our capital city Vilnius. It's located almost in the center of country, and as you can witness, it is located at the confluence of the two largest rivers of Lithuania, Nemunas and Neris, and it also located at the very important crossroads. And historically, Kaunas was always very important for the trade as well as for defense purposes. And yeah, I'm not going to go too deep into the history of Kaunas, but as a heritage official, I must, note some most significant layers of built heritage in Kaunas. Of course, Kaunas was established in the Middle Ages, and we have some legacy from those times left, like monasteries, churches, and castle. Then there was a 200 years of Russian occupation, or let's call it annexion, and it also left some marks in this city landscape that we can witness today, and still we have to preserve it. But the most valuable one is, of course, the legacy that comes from the 1940. It's the time when Kaunas was the provisional capital or temporal capital of Lithuanian state. We consider this era, this 20 years, 21 year, as a golden era of Kaunas. So why Kaunas? In the first place, why it was chosen to be capital? As you might know, in 1918, the First World War ended, and a lot of new European states emerged all around Europe, and one of them was Lithuania. But unfortunately, Lithuania gained its independence, but it lost its historical capital, Vilnius. So the capital was moved to Kaunas. And this is how Kaunas streets looked at the beginning. It really didn't look like a proper European city. It didn't have many of the features that were needed for the capital city to operate. For example, as you can see at the picture, there were no pavements. The pavements were made of I don't know, of timber, and there were no sewage, no running water, and most citizens lived in such wooden cabins. So Kaunas was really depressive, dark, and dirty at the time. So there was a challenge, to transform this city into a real European capital. So and this transformation in 20 years was carried out, and from that into this, we experienced a huge construction boom. In 20 years period, there were more than 12,000 new buildings built in Kaunas, of course, for governmental purposes, like government buildings, but also schools, universities, churches, hospitals, and so on. But the most important thing, that those new buildings mostly were built in a new style, a modernist style, which in paradox, it was meant to be international style that is common for all the other European countries as well, but it was adopted in very authentic way. It was changed according to local needs, and today we can talk about a Kaunas School of Modernist Architecture. And now I'm going to show you a short, okay. Okay, there's supposed to be a video, but okay, let's skip it. Yeah. However, everyone's sorry. Yeah, okay, let's skip this one and move on, because we can perhaps focus on the results of the EHL batch and not specifically on Kaunas architecture of modernism, which you should, of course, witness by yourselves. Come to visit Kaunas. EHL designation Kaunas is seen as a tool for raising awareness, educating and building a community. Inclusiveness is the key element. Of course, it is used for increasing tourism flow, and what's very, very important, it's used for developing new products and overall economy. And of course, making new international connections. Like example, like we are experiencing today. I'm here in Finland talking about some EHL things. And what's also important to know that Kaunas City Municipality is the site manager, but it is not the only actor which is using this tool. We have also several other actors or stakeholders, let's say. One that is Kaunas in a municipal tourism and economic agency. So they are the ones who are responsible for marketing city, both locally and internationally. We have a very new one. It's Kaunas Capital of Culture 2022, and as you may guess, it means that Kaunas will be a capital of European culture in 2022. This means that Kaunas City Municipality has already established a specific agency that is organizing tons and tons of events, and they happen every day, every week, and they are building community. They took a very innovative approach towards this European capital of culture, and they want to have by 2022 already established some traditions, some traditional festivals, some community, and so on. Okay, so we have also different NGOs, universities, and most important, entrepreneurs and businesses. They're also taking some share in this process. Okay, so now I'm going to show some examples of how EHL designation was used. One of the first, let's say, activities that were implemented, we marked the selected buildings with EHL plaque. I forgot to mention. So there were 44 buildings total that were selected in this nomination file, and although EHL comes for the phenomenon of Kaunas as a provisional capital of that time, but however there were specifically 44 buildings included that let's say represent that modernist architecture the best way. Second, there were information boards in front of EHL designated buildings installed that contains both Lithuanian and English language, as well as as Braille script for the blind people. And also you can see that there is a EHL logo as well as QR code that leads to website. Then there another very important activity of Kaunas City Municipality that I was personally responsible for. It's restoration support program. It's at that time it was introduced in 2015. It was a unique thing in Lithuania. No other city had this municipal program, and now they're like copying it and implementing something similar in their cities. It is a fund, a grant for the owners of the historical buildings. They can apply for funding, and we can fund up to 50% of the expenses for the restoration works. And here are some of the examples of modernist buildings of the time that were restored. And in the 4 years, this program allocated almost 2 million euro, and more than 88 projects were funded. And this program is still operating, and we hope to keep that. Yeah, there were some smaller things like leaflets, printed for promotional things like souvenirs with the EHL logo. Also in Kaunas took this EHL designation really seriously, and we see as a tool that can really promote the tourism. And here is an example how EHL was represented in the stands on the tourism fairs. And yes, of course, free maps for the tourists. And here I have one in Finnish language as well. I will give it to Lena, okay, afterwards. And there are specific routes for the tourists created that can be, individually tourists can see all this famous architecture. And there were 5 mobile apps developed. Kaunas of 1994 and their Kaunas Pocket Guide into our architecture. But the most important 3, they are comic book for children, coloring app for children, and symbol recognition game also for children. So we took this opportunity to involve youngsters and children. We had talks today that we should encourage young people to let's encourage their involvement in this issue. So I think these applications for mobile phones really does this job. Yeah, one innovative approach is a coloring book for children that contains modernist buildings, and it was printed in 2015, and they are still available for purchase. There is activities of NGOs. One NGO called Exkursas is organizing free guided tours for citizens and for tourists, where people can enter those modernist buildings for free and hear their stories. One of other NGO activity was Art Deco furniture exhibition that was partly funded by Kaunas City Municipality. There is another activity that was carried out by the same NGO. It's a free workshop for wooden door restoration for modernist buildings. And now let's talk about entrepreneurs and businesses that are also involved in promoting EHL and interwar modernist architecture. So one of the examples, one of the finest, I would say, examples, it's the perfume that was inspired by Kaunas Art Deco interiors. I personally know this girl, this perfumer, and there was a win-win situation. She created this scent, and we funded its production, and now it's you can purchase it whenever you come to Kaunas. And there's another very interesting example, a jewelry line created by an artist, but this jewelry are made of concrete. And as you can see in the picture, she also took inspiration directly from Kaunas modernist buildings. She used some elements of it, and it's pretty expensive one, I must say. For example, this pair of I don't know how is it called in English, things that cost €200. And yeah, souvenir chocolates with some information and some pictures of modernist buildings. That's also available for purchase when you come to Kaunas. let's say, inclusiveness of academia and individuals, of also scholars, is the printing of books, publishing of books, sorry. And one of the finest example is the book Architecture of Optimism, written by Marija Drėmaitė and Vaidas Petrulis, the true experts of modernist architecture in Europe. There was also a traveling exhibition, Architecture of Optimism, created. That was last year when Lithuania was celebrating its 100 years anniversary of independence. So this exhibition was traveling all around Europe and all around even in America. There was in embassies where it was seen as a thing that can really represent culture of Lithuania. And there are also some different books as well, like albums of photography and so on. And there is also joint, let's say, activity that a lot of actors are involved, Kaunas City Municipality, NGOs, and universities, and so on. It's organizing international conferences, workshops, exhibitions. So we are really seeking to involve as much people as possible, and to research, to do some scientific stuff with all of this, and of course to promote the topic. And modern cities. This forum was held this autumn in Kaunas by Kaunas City Municipality, and we're seeking to establish a network of modern cities all around Europe. So I think Helsinki can join this forum as well, because you definitely have some fine modernist architecture. One of the example is this building. Okay. Okay, there's another short activity. It's a platform for community building where anyone can, just fill a story of the building that he or she is living, and to create a very personalized version of that interwar history. And the last thing I have to mention, that we're also going for UNESCO World Heritage nomination. In 2014, Kaunas City Council voted for that goal, and since then we are developing this nomination file, and we hope to finish next year. And as you can see, we have already made this application. That's this tentative list. So Kaunas now on the tentative list already. What are the differences? Let's see. As I mentioned, EHL was designated for 44 buildings that are spread out in different city locations. In contrary, UNESCO nomination will cover, let's say, areas, complete areas of the city, not individual buildings. So it's quite different things. And I believe so these two nominations or designations will complement each other. They will not contradict by any ways. Well, of course, if we will succeed. And finally, conclusions. So I would say that EHL designation is seen as a very significant assessment for Kaunas. It's a really popular one, and we use it as a trademark, as a tool for promoting Kaunas, both local, national, and international levels. And EHL designation definitely serves for educating, building local community, inclusiveness, increasing tourism, making international connections, developing new products and overall economy. And what's also most important perhaps, and so despite Kaunas City Municipality being the official site manager, a wide variety of activities are being implemented by other local actors, NGOs, academia, entrepreneurs and businesses. Kiitos. That was all.
Panel discussion, and now half the audience is in front of the half of the audience. So this will be very cozy and fun. No, just a personal comment to start this. I've been thinking about teenagers a lot lately. Also in this seminar, I couldn't stop thinking about teenagers, and every once in a while I have a very edgy discussion at home with a specific teenager, and then I try to think that there's written on her forehead that a work in progress. And sort of this is what it's all about also with the EHL. We are open to discussion. I have noticed that all of us are very direct and realistic, and even on the philosophical level, we can come down to the practical details. So let's keep an open mind and communication also during this panel. Now I will sit down. And I don't need to present the speakers. They've given their very fine speeches already. But we shall continue to... first, one request for the audience. We shall involve you in the discussion, but once you take the microphone, please tell us your name and the organization that you represent, so then we know a bit more about you. And you can also ask in Finnish if you like. Voitte kysyä myös suomeksi. We shall translate and keep up with the discussion. Okay. I don't know if we need a warm-up question, but I have one. Okay, it's a personal question. Tuuli presented us with results of a survey on what the Finns think about heritage and what we could bring to the European tray of heritage. And on the top of the list there was nature, art, folklore, equality, and then I lost count after that. Architecture, okay, thank you. But personally, what does cultural heritage mean to you? You can take the European level if you like, conceptual level or more concretely. But just briefly, what comes to your mind without thinking too deeply? Tuuli can start.
Oh, this is a kind of giving association of certain words or images. But what comes first to my mind when I think about European cultural heritage? Well, I have to say that quite often when I'm in big European art museums, my background is in art history, I kind of feel that, this is something that is similar everywhere. That wherever you go in a big art museums, they are very similar always, and kind of that is what kind of is shared and what is common. But of course, this is something very elitist and kind of very high cultural understanding of Europe. But sometimes when you just communicate people who are having very different kind of background, you also have this kind of similar type of feeling of similarities, that we share something. So I think that it's kind of more in a kind of personal experiences of similarities between either it is a kind of tangible heritage or then experiences between people. So this is probably something that comes to my mind first.
Personal European, in a few sentences. And then Saulius, what comes to your mind?
Well, heritage is a source of identity, of national identity, local identity. So just that.
Thank you. Gerald.
For me, cultural heritage is everything what brings us to the place we are now. The good thing and the bad things. It's European.
Fine.
Yeah, I mean, for me, especially somebody having left her country and now living in another country, brings another dimension actually, and also in the changing environment that we live. I mean, internationalization, globalization. I think it's it's a kind of a signposting as well, and it's definitely, I mean, as regards my case, it's an identity, like you say. When you travel outside Europe and you see European culture there, it reminds you of your own continent and where you are in your origins. So I think, yeah, it is about an identity, still open, not fixed, but open, but also like a question of roots. I mean, being German, for example, and living in Belgium, I still sing German Christmas songs and read poems, and I think it's also important for an identity. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think culture heritage is everything. It's an englobing notion. It started as monuments, then natural parks joined, then intangible heritage, including all the social and cultural activities. So now everything is heritage. To put it one sentence, the institutionalized form of culture. Didn't make it easier, but that's how it is. So it's something linking natural and cultural together, and including all the cultural and social activities. And what is European heritage? That's still on the progress.
Yeah.
Maybe just to make one reflection, I really liked. I was in Berlin a few years ago when there was the classic Museum Insel museums, when they put non-European objects there, just one, and that really take us out of our comfort zones. And that's what I like to have a current European heritage.
Thank you. I would like to use only Finnish word that I knew. For me, heritage means sisu. In English, it means it's a simple word, but very hard to translate. Yes, I think that this is the physical and mental basis of explanation, or to be a person, to be human, and it no matter that this is local or it's European or global or planetary something, but it's something that this is always to have. We must to have to be a human.
Well, that's already quite a lot what the other ones have been saying, and I'm just like going to add then that actually culture heritage for me is it's the great things, but it's also banal things. It's also everyday practices. It's not only belonging, it's not only the past, it's also what is now here in the present. What is actually all connected with culture heritage. And if you're looking at the European one, then of course it intersects with everything like this as well. And it's altogether very diverse. It's not only diverse from the idea of if it's materia, immateria, if it's this or that, but it also kind of connects all kind of different local, regional, national, international, human values into it, which are universal as well. So that's it.
Wow, great answers. I think I need to sit down. Oh, I'm sitting already down, and to think about this for a while. I have a list of questions, but now I'm changing the script because I know that some of you have questions for the other speakers and are dying to ask these questions. So I think it's only fair that it's not me speaking, but you talking to each other and then the audience also commenting. So I'd like to ask you to ask someone else, a panelist, a question. Who would like to start? Do you have anything on your mind? I was hinted that someone has something in her mind.
Well, I think I mentioned that I was particularly interested in hearing more about these networking activities, and quite many of you talked about already this issue. Based on our field research, we noticed that in quite many sites, these networking activities basically meant networking for some persons working at these sites. There might be, that there were some small sites where there was one person who had been able to participate in these networking meetings. And there was then some other people who didn't even know that this kind of network existed because it was only always the one person who participated in them. So I would be interested to hear a bit about more your views of these networking activities and these networking meetings. And also, you mentioned that you have associate sites who have not been included to the kind of the real network. So what was the reason for them to, some of those to participate and some not to participate, and how do you see that it kind of creates certain hierarchy within this network, that there are those who are really active and those who are kind of just following what the others are doing? And also related to these networking meetings, my research team, we tried to get access to these award ceremonies or some of these meetings, but we were denied several times access to those. And we were not the only scholars. We have also heard that some other scholars have not tried to get access to these meetings, but not had permission to do it. So I think that it would be really good to kind of open up these meetings a bit and also invite outsiders to take part and also follow that what is being discussed and what kind of themes people there are interested to share.
Okay, who would like to take on the theme of networking?
The network is my topic.
Yeah, it's your...
First of all, I thought I had to bring a piece of paper with me to ask all the questions, so I hope you remind me when I miss something. First of all, no, I'm not fear the topic of a hierarchy. The approach was at the beginning, research, the call was having some sites in a network consortium to work together, and we invited all the sites. Some of the sites said from our budget situation, fine economically, we can go and bear our 20% own contribution. And the others say, I'm not so sure about that I will be able to do it. So I'm just supporting you. If we agreed on that. If we have to read documents, we do it. When we have to join meetings, yes, we get reimbursed the travel costs. Perfect. We will support the network, but we want to go and have designated time for the network. So that was this separation it was coming. And some sites did not react at that moment, so we have no response from that. So we said, okay, for the moment we're not putting them in the application. But it was one of the major issues and one of the major requests from the Commission to include all the sites, of course. So definitely we will do that so that they can come, they can work with us. We still have already questions from the outsiders, you call it. Could we now still be associate partner? So we have that to discuss how we call them. So if it's official, a change in the app, in the project, we get selected, then it might be a little bit more difficult. But maybe we have an additional list and call them additional associate partner or something like that to name that. But we will treat this group more or less the same. There's no difference. The only difference was that they did not react at that moment. So that was the roles, the different we have. You said also about the situation that in the sites, usually one or just a few people really involved in that network activities. That's definitely true. And even for our sites, it's only 3-4 persons they really actively involved in that topic. For some sites, it's also a language topic. So when I see the participation of Luzhna, and sorry, I always mentioned the smallest, one of the smallest site we have, they always need a translator when they come to Brussels. So this is also a topic for the organizational capacity we have in the sites. They are very much different. So we also as a network have to deal with that some have the time and have the resources to support and to do and to work in the network. And on the other hand, we have some they do not can do it. So we have also to help them, with I say means to support them. So one of them, I think it's still here because I forgot about to mention it during my presentation. We said we will be before we had the network, we from the Imperial Palace said it's an idea to have a memory is a good idea, and we go for it and produce it. And we will include all the others, and if the sites are willing, they can have it. And this is a promotional tool. We will sell that at the how it's called in English, the price we had to pay for the production. So the price is open for the sites to define by themselves. Yeah, so this is the topic of the network, and this was the idea of the network also, that we gave the smaller sites also some support they wouldn't have without the network. But as you said, there are different, and if, as I said, even for us, it's a challenge to keep all the staff members informed about it. And I think it's not only for us; it's for every side the topic. Because sometimes you have an European department or international department, they are dealing with that, and the others, they are working for maybe for the exhibitions, not really know it about. I think all of us, I could not exclude any side, that we have still to think about that and be aware of that we communicate our label or the awarded level, also to our staff that they know it about, because they had the first ambassador about it, of course. Did I forget something?
That's very good. Just to remind that there are several possible or potential application writers here. Lena has a question, but I don't know if it's connected with this or something else.
It's maybe the same very concrete, practical question. How to make a good application? I was thinking of the people in the room who are maybe potential, would like to submit an application. How to do it? I mean, I think Gabor and Jutta, you know it rather well already, and you all you've made successful applications beforehand. What is the most difficult part, and what kind of advice would you give now to these people, and also for us as the national coordinator?
Who will start?
Please summarize your best advice to us.
Of course, the application follows the logic of most European calls, so excellence, impact and implementation. Here the impact is called program, and the implementation is the realization. But probably the most difficult thing is the excellence. And to start with, there's a 60-word summary, and that's the most difficult. It doesn't sound like that, I know, but if you read the 60 words, I think if you don't have that 60 words clear in your head, probably the excellence wouldn't work. Because normally in the 60 words you have to explain non-experts and non-Finnish persons, because there are maybe of course for the national selection, but also for the European selection, what is the real message behind the site? How you wish to represent your site, and that's not easy, because of course you don't have to tell the whole story. The 60 words is very, very little. And it should leave the national discourse and the national interpretation of the site, and that's the biggest challenge to start with, I suppose. So, of course, in the decision there are three possible selection criteria for the European integration, the transnational, and the European history or the significant European event. I think, very often the sites try to fulfill all the three, and it's not a requirement. One is enough. And of course, maybe the European integration is very difficult for a Finnish site. It's also difficult for a Hungarian site, because we were not there in the beginning, but you might have some excellent ideas I ignore. But the other two, or even one of them, is enough. And I suppose, so that's probably, you should just think about the 60 words. That's an easy exercise. But if it's clear, and maybe to show it to others, maybe non-Finnish partners, if they understand what's at stake, I think that's a good start. And then, of course, the other one is maybe the program, because to finish with the excellence, once you have these 60 words ready and approved, I think it's very easy to develop the excellence part from that. And the program should really cover young people, but it should also cover the other aspects and the multilingual part also. So there should be a way to find, or at least propose a way to think about as the European audience as large as it is possible, even if it's idealistic. And I think if somebody would like to write a good application, I can suggest the reports, the 2016 and the 2018 reports. The panel members and try to put all their goodwill and knowledge and experience into that. I think there are hidden and not so hidden suggestions about this. And it's also interesting to see because the reports also include the non-selected sites. And I think that's also very informative why they were not selected. And I keep insist on the fact that they were all very noble initiatives. So it's not that because they probably the most often they couldn't find how to leave the national interpretive package and comply with the European requirements.
Great tips. Yeah.
If you are, the other thing is also for your just a practical advice. You can always contact those sites who have already received the award. That's what they were saying in the interviews which we were doing with them. That they would be happy to also, discuss with upcoming candidates about the whole thing. And then they were also saying, yeah, it's true. It's rather difficult to fit in the things, the requirements, into short text things. But don't you worry. You can always try to stuff it at other places as well in the same application. So always go for this as well.
Okay. Any other tips? I think Krista's wording.
I just want to, from the Commission point of view, I would not recommend to go for this solution. It is true that the application, sorry to contradict, but the application is read in a whole by the EU panel members, and Representative Gabor, I want to thank you also, the panel members, because there is a lot of work involved. So the 60 words, and we go back to the applicant sites if we don't find that, because the 60 words will also be your voice towards the outside world, because it will be the text that will be on the plaque. Correct me if I'm so. So there needs to be a reflection on that, and there needs to be really the 60 words, and the President is also very strict about this. So, as I said, yes, you can include information throughout the application. It's all read by the panel members, and it will all be taken into consideration for the appreciation. But I think it's worth that we pass on the word to you. You went through all this process. You made it to the list. Probably you want to share your experience from the very beginning. What triggered the decision to take part in the application and to put the successful application together?
Okay, Saulius.
Well, first of all, personally, I wasn't involved in developing this application, but I know that how those processes went. So I think this initial move was from our Ministry of Culture. There was a now retired lady that was originally from Kaunas, and she was a fan of this modernist architecture, and she offered actually for the municipality of Kaunas to make an application. And yes, this application was made by two co-workers of mine. So two people wrote this application, that it succeeded. That's it. Very, very simple.
Yeah, maybe I should step in because I wrote the application. My colleague heard the first time about it. She was visiting an information event from the Austrian National Coordinator, and they proposed some sites they couldn't have. And the funny thing was they mentioned one part of the Imperial Palace, and then we wrote the structure that they cannot do it. We only can do it because we are the owner. And then we decide internally that makes sense for us and we go for it. And I started to write the application. And to be honest, the summary or the short for a version is always the last for me, because I never start with that first, because I cannot do it, but it's my personal thing. So you would never receive any application from my side if I start with the short version, but that's just how I do that. The major thing I would say for the application, for the project, from my point of view, you started a little bit to say that when you start to think about your project, you always have to mix the things you already planned to do on a local or a site level, and then you see what the application is more or less requested from you. So if you start to add, you will have the problems in the monitoring. So please be aware of that you have a good mixture, because with them what you have to do, and hopefully that fits to that what the Commission asks for the label itself, and add only the things you can afford. Because sometimes there are big projects in, and at the end, when you come to the monitoring, you then have to explain why you're not able to do it. And therefore, I think that mixture is, from a practical side, the most important thing. What I always tried to, when I wrote the application, I always tried to make sure what is already have to be done. So for us, the maintenance of the complex, which is also part, or was a part in the application when we did it, was not a problem for us, because that's standard work for us. So we all the time do it, even we're not asked for from the Commission in that sense. We are asked for some other people's. And then we added things we need to fulfill the request was mentioned in the label, in the call, or how it's called, the paper for it. Application form. This was, I think, the major thing. You have to be aware of this balance. And the second thing is what I like to mention. We also had the network also have one working group, which means that if someone is a new site which will apply for it, you can come and share with us what you plan, and we will give you hints about how we would do it, so that we increase our community to be bigger and stronger in the future.
Okay, so there's help and support available. Tuuli wants to add something.
Yeah, just briefly, because we also included in our data 16 proposals, as well as, of course, we're analyzing these selection reports. So I would say that it's important to take very seriously these different values that are emphasized also there in the criteria, because it seems that the selection reports are also emphasizing these values very, very much. And of course, these values are well, the values of the EU are listed in the Lisbon Treaty, for example. So there you can see that what these values are, and then to think about that, how your site contribute them, or how your site resonate them, or kind of reflects that what these values mean at your site, and then try to be also realistic in that you know what's the kind of the true link to those values, and not to just create new narratives, but something that you already have at your site.
Yeah, sustainable narratives, I think. Is the audience happy with the tips, or do you want to know more or ask more? Here's a question.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for everybody. My name is Anja Lappi. I'm coming from Kuopio, from Minna Canth House Association. Gerald, you show
Both
some...
is correct.
Huh?
Both is correct.
Okay. You show some key factors in your presentations, and maybe sometimes it can be some difficulties kind of describe everything to applications very concretely. So do you have any tips or some statistic tips, so amounts or
you mean
numbers
the first page about the site? Okay.
Yeah, and when you kind of plan, and when you decide who is coming with or not?
To be honest, these figures partly we gather when we did the application, and we said we have to explain the site a little bit more, what is in, and then we gather the data. And to be honest, I think it's different for each site. It has to belong to your site to make that very clear what it is. And I think we also, I've thought about that. We mentioned the 20 million visitors as well. but still we do not have a research about it. It's an estimation, and we tried to make that clear where the estimation is that realistic, and we found out it's very much realistic. It's very easy to achieve the 20 millions, but it has to be, as I said, relevant for the site. So. For instance, the 19 wings, it's a special topic for us. So there is no real structure. I can tell you what's needed for the application on the basis of figures. But I think what is important is we discussed that. I think when we was in Brussels as well. What are the key factors? Let me say indicators, which help us to explain that we fulfill what we did. And I think. We did it 2015, the application. I think the monitoring criteria and the key indicators is still there in the application form. If that happened, then you have to make sure that what you mentioned as a project or as activity, that you have an indicator you can really measure and achieve. So if you start to talk about, I will make a new exhibition, and then you have no idea about the topic and about the area you have available for it, and then you already mentioned we will have some numbers of visitors. I think that's quite far away. You don't have any steps before you can say how realistic is that indicator you already mentioned. So I think we tried that very much, that we say what we can really achieve at that moment. Maybe I hope they will accept that in the monitoring. We just said we will have that. So we make a qualitative indicator, not a quantitative. So we say we will achieve that we do this exhibition. And then when we did it, we explain what we did, but we say we are going to do it, because for us in that situation, we had a lot of museum sites inside, but we never organized an exhibition in the Imperial Palace in Vienna. We did it in the Imperial Palace Innsbruck. So that's a different site, different story. But we tried to make that that is match very good. That's, from my point of view, the most important. I have quite a close look on that. Because I don't like when I'm asked for at the end to fulfill some indicators. When I then I have to explain. That's not really measurable, and we do not have the figures about it. So I try to make that very adequate for that what you have in your activities.
Any other questions? There's one. Lisa.
Thank you. My name is Liisa Lohtander, and I come from the Finnish Local Heritage Federation and also for the European Heritage Days. And I would like to ask, how are the panel members chosen? And do you think there should be experts also from heritage or minority NGOs in that panel? Since I have been in the panel for the European Heritage Stories that were mentioned by Krista earlier for 2 years now. And also another NGO member is part of that panel. Of course, it's a different panel, but are there some rules regarding what type of organization a panel member should represent?
So I think this is for Jutta.
Yeah, this is eine Fangfrage, I would say in German. No, I should say, what I can tell you, I mean, this is really a process where I tapped into when starting this function, but I haven't looked in detail yet. What I can tell you is that the members, the 13 members, are designated by the different institutions that are involved in this action, which means the European Parliament, the Council of Europe, so the member states, and the Committee of the Regions. We have some panel members that they are designated. Yeah, the Council, that's what I said. And the Commission. And the Commission. I'm sorry. Yes. For as far as the Commission is concerned, we just extended the mandate to also ensure coherence and continuity in the panel, because we had 8 new members, and I suppose that, for expertise or experts are communicating their interest to be part of the panel to their respective institutions, and then it's probably on a call. I should admit, I should go back with this information back to you, because I'm not sure. I know that is a balanced nomination between the institutions and also on the profile, but how exactly they were designated, I can't answer you today, but I promise I will find it out. So if you are interested to be part of the panel, I mean, I will definitely go through you. I will go back to that. Sorry for that, but there's always new questions. Yeah.
Yeah, that's of course a question of transparency also to be inclusive in the panel as well. Okay, I think I will take the question of visibility and recognition of the label on the table. So from the sites we hear that some have done a lot of work to even promote the label with products and local marketing, and you could do that on different levels, on the local level, regional level, national level, and also the European level. But clearly the visibility and the recognition of the label is not on the same level as, for instance, the World Heritage Convention. So what could be done more? What do you think? And on different levels. So you can choose your own level, and what could we do to improve the visibility of the label? Who would like to start?
I mean, if I may ask, because you are not the first one who comes forward with such challenging questions. I mean, we compare quickly the European Heritage Label with UNESCO and Europa Nostra, etc., etc. We should not forget the European Heritage Label comes with very, very little funds. You know, with very, very little. We work really. I mean, the sites work really with the budget that comes from national level. We work with very limited resources. So I know these are our guiding examples, and we would also love to come there one at a certain stage, but for the time being we are not yet there. What we can do, I mean, definitely we have to work from at European level down to the sites. I mean, our communication material needs to be improved, and believe me, I mean, I'm very happy for all the feedback we get through the sites directly, through the national coordinators, through other instances and brainstorming event, how we can improve that. Say it social media. We just had a discussion over lunch that nowadays, especially if we want to reach out with this action to young people, we have to also adapt our way we communicate towards the outside world. I mean, definitely we also had the outcome of the EHL Days, the European Heritage Label Days in October. We also said reaching out to local communities, to regional communities, why not also to businesses, you know, to ask for support, which then enabled us again to make the label more visible. Again, at European level, we have already started thinking about how we can also do the label as such. I mean, bring it at another level to have it more visibility also at Commission level. I mean, have it signed by Commissioner, etc. There's ideas which automatically then will bring another dimension. And yeah, definitely there is room for improvement, work in process, like you say, progress, like you say. And I don't know if somebody wants to.
Yeah, I will jump in. When we get the label 2016 and we first started, the idea of the network was already there, because we always said, and I think this was the question I missed before, we had sites. We have then discussed about the potential of a network. What does we need? That we need that, and I think the point is, the sites have to deal with the label on their local or community side, because that's their original topic. And I discussed it with your colleague in the lunch break. I think the point is that the sites firstly have to do their own tasks. And that includes some part of mentioning the promoting the label the label as well. But the Commission has a specific role and can do specific things. So they cannot go for separate or individual support of the sites for the brand, for having the label. So that's not possible. So we need the network to have the coverage about the European level, that we have the chance to do things which then also help in the partially individual the sites. But still we're missing that in comparison to the UNESCO. I think the UNESCO had the structure in a central way, and then in each country they had their local commission, and they support the level as well. We had different organizations which are the national coordinator. To be honest, some are active, more active, some are not so active, and we have to deal with that. That's the local situation, and the visibility of the label is, I think, locally at the site is not so bad, because all of us do what they have to do to make that visible, that the site has the label. But the next step to spread that in the region, for some of the sites, that is too much effort to do that alone. They need the support itself from the national coordinator, or maybe for, as we said, the local community to spread that more. And I think that the missing link, we have now the network, but we need the countries. We need the country level and maybe the regional level to fill that gap we have in supporting the visibility. And I think we cannot expect that the label sites itself do it alone. We cannot expect that the network is able to do it alone. We need this connection and to get them to create more visibility. Of course, one thing is to understand the label as a brand and make that really, have to really make a branding for it to make it clear, so that we can really make it very recognizable. But still, there is a lot of work to do, and we have also to integrate the stakeholders we now at the moment missing a little bit.
Yeah. I think for the municipal level, Saulius described well. Sorry to throw the ball to you without you asking for it, but you really, I catch the word brand and came to think about the perfume and other things that you showed, that there's really been branding doing in Kaunas for the EHL.
Yes, in our case, I think it was win-win situation, because for a long time Kaunas has been looking for its distinctiveness, so how it could distinguish, how to position, how to market, how to promote Kaunas in the tourism field, and now in this EHL. So that's really great, opportunity, a great tool, and that's why it's so popular. Let's say, but it's because it's also because it's really important for local people. So otherwise we wouldn't have such, let's say, results without it. For example, if this site would be important for some, I don't know, scholars only, but not for the people, then no. But this, it's really personal, I would say, attachment of the people, of the local people, and that's why we are really happy to work with it.
Yeah, I think that's a good advice also for the process of building up a new site, to involve the community. Tuuli has a word.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree that branding and marketing, it needs specific measures to do that, and also resources to do that. But I think that this is also a kind of broader question of engaging people, and this is what we discussed over lunch, that how in general to get particularly young people, them interested in cultural heritage and engage in heritage, and of course then social media is one of these channels. But also, if you kind of thinking in a practical level, that how the EHL could be involved in this. So I was just wondering that how about try to include schools more closely and cooperate, increase cooperation between EHL and schools, because we also have UNESCO schools. So could we, for example, have EHL schools, or try to get local heritage actors to who have the EHL award, to have some concrete projects with local schools, for example, and because of course the young people are one of the kind of the target audiences of this action. So I think that that might be one practical thing.
Okay, Jutta wants to add, and then
Sorry, just because that's great. Actually, we included our master program, the EHL site, and we proposed the same thing in the vision, that we should have EHL chairs later, just like the UNESCO chairs. Again, of course, on the European level, there's so much to do about the EHL. because one thing is this is an extremely delicate structure so far. So there are 38 or now 48 sites, but we don't know how they will survive. So we have to be care of this, I suppose, on each levels, because otherwise it would be a real failure if that, the HL wouldn't survive because of lack of funding from the European level. So I think it's a common interest for all of us to take care of it. And I think it's an excellent idea to link it to already existing structures like the Erasmus and all the others. That's what I made allusion to. So I think it's an excellent one, but that should come from the national levels, I think. There should be some pressure on the EU institutions that if they created something, they should take care of it, because otherwise it wouldn't survive. And, I suppose these values we all share. And as already Gerard mentioned, sorry to take the micro, but I think there's huge difference in the national corporations. I mean, we could see national organizers who are obsessed with it and very, like Portugal. I mean, they already have 4 sites and they are very keen, 3 sites, sorry, they're very keen on this, and they have traveling exhibition, etc. And other national coordinators who just administrators. And of course, in those countries, the EHL is very little, is not really disseminated. So I think it's a good start in Finland. So again, I can congratulate that you started it like that. So, but that should be a good practice for the other countries, and I suppose this practice should be promoted for other countries. And somehow the national coordinators, who very often I can sympathize with them because probably they have too many other things to do, but it's not a good solution on the national level in that case, or don't take their task seriously. So I think that should also somehow, I don't know how it can be changed. Of course, it's a delicate matter also to urge national levels to take European tasks more seriously. But I think that would be also a good thing if there would be some job description for the national coordinators what to do with DHL, because at the moment it's very accidental.
And Jutta, and then I think we need to close.
If I may
the panel.
add to that, I mean, this is a very good idea to have a job description, but I mean, I'm always reminded that we are under subsidiarity here as well, and culture policy is always at the level of the member states. But I mean, you're absolutely right. I think a key word here is ownership. I mean, ownership both at the EU level and also at the site level and all the levels in between. And I can also inform you, you mentioned it about the schools. I mean, there is some sites that are already very actively involved in the e-twinning project that links schools and classrooms with each other and with stakeholders here at the sites. And we are very happy about it. And by the way, the memory game was given to these e-twinning schools involved in cultural heritage projects under the European Year of Cultural Heritage. And also recently we reached out to the, probably you're aware of it, the Discover EU project, where Interrail, I mean train tickets are given to young citizens to travel around Europe and to be ambassadors for the European story. And so the EHL sites will be involved normally in their itinerary. And so just to tell you, we are working on it as well to create, to enhance the visibility. We are in close contact with the House of European History in Brussels, which is, if you want, at European level, the same as at national level, the sites. And we want also there to have an exchange of good practices, because in principle it's a communication about the European building. And so we hope there also for a constructive cooperation, because like we said yesterday, our vision is also wherever in which site you enter, you would enter the European space. And that is our also to bring the sites in contact with each other, to communicate on other sites in other countries, Brussels, the House of European History, communicating on the sites that are in the member states. So to really make this European space a reality.
Thank you. I was going to conclude the panel by asking about the future, but I think this was very appropriate to end with the children, because they are, you know, the next generation and the future. So thank you so much for the panel discussion. And then Lena wants to take a photo. So keep on your posts. and visibility. Thank you. And then we move on to the last number, which is the conclusions. Thank you.
Okay, I try to make it short because we are running out of time. Today in Finland it's the day when you're supposed to take your children or your child to the work. It's a national initiative, and today our child has been more or less the European Heritage label without any actual children here. I have the feeling that this nursery school has truly been fruitful, at least from our point of view, and I hope that you share my and our opinion. But simply to conclude, some conclusions. First of all, the heritage label in itself. In the Faro Convention context, you might think that it's in itself a heritage community for the whole of the Europe, and the question, of course, is that does it fulfill this rather huge requirement or idea? Discussing the European integration values, history and diversity, and taking the young people into account. Somehow I have slightly the feeling that there's two realities based on today's discussions. We have the European Commission or Union reality, and then we have the site level reality when it comes to the sites. I'll come back to this issue. And the two main risks that I for myself noted today is being, as I said already in the beginning, being too institutionalized. There is actually a certain risk for this. And then the broadness of the heritage label's objectives. Is there any need to focus actually more than we nowadays do? Then when it comes to the political use of the past or cultural heritage, it's quite true, but it's to me it's more or less unavoidable. And this topic was taken up by our Hungarian guest rather clearly today. It's also an important part of heritage policies. It's unavoidable and it's really important. In a way, I have the feeling that it's also in increase or at increase throughout Europe. But then the question, of course, is that on what set of values do we base our this politic element of heritage? And the European Heritage Label should be, and so far is, a fora for value discussion, and it should be even more for that purpose. And then in the context, Jutta took up the national regional diversity, but actually other elements of diversity doesn't seem to be officially included, and that's so to say a shortback in connection with this one. For instance, the question of emancipation, gender equality, minorities as a broad concept, or even difficult heritage. The part of diversity, you shouldn't only cope with national or regional diversity, you should scope even with different elements of social, political, or whatever other diversity in Europe, and challenge also throughout the authorized heritage discourses in pluralism. And then the question of communication, it should be altogether be pan-European, addressing to European international audience. And what it actually calls all the time is action, activities. That seems to be the crucial issue. And when Tuuli took up the question of being able to participate, even open access governance or government or administration is a question of communication, and it should be fulfilled. Then the importance of being dynamic all the time. It's actually the sole reason for the European Heritage Label sites and the initiative, with innovative activities, constructive criticism, questions throughout, dynamic, critical, future-oriented heritage governance should be included. When it comes to the Finnish ideas presented by Tuuli, actually it wasn't no surprise that it's equality, which I appreciate, especially art, nature and culture, everyone's rights to his or her environment and architecture. And that's a good starting point for our proposals. And then Europe without borders, the issue of diversity of historic contexts. It seems that the only changes has been permanent in the European history, but then from what perspectives today do you envisage the history? And there's a certain risk for anachronistic, so to say, adaptations or political views on our history. That's also one of the risks. And when it comes to the sites, the question of being a money pot came up actually with rather forcefully. Challenges with the tourism are also well known. The question of issue of sustainability and the question of markets, so to say, elements or driving forces when it comes to heritage. I'm an administrator myself, and somehow I still have my doubts on how far we should go in this direction. Even though it's needed, I don't question that. Then the question of financing. The European Commission doesn't have too many means for this initiative, so it's actually a tool for getting extra financing. And then the instrumental practical benefits seems to be the more or less, I wouldn't say overruling, but important elements on the side level. Education, entertainment should be included. It somehow is there, but I have the feeling when it comes to the young people, still far more would be called for, even in the case of Finnish proposals in the future. And that's more or less all I have to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We've now come to the end of our seminar. It's been very enlightening. I warmly thank all of our speakers. And we also have a small gift for you. The wheel chart of sustainability that was developed for a project that had to do with intangible cultural heritage. But we've tried it with other things, and it can be applied to almost any cultural initiative. So we hope you have joy with this little tool of ours. Thank you very much.
And as we only have these for our presenters, other ones of you who are working with sustainable development and are thinking, how can we work concretely on it and through all of the 4 dimensions of sustainable development, go online to aineetonkulttuuriperintö.fi/ajankohtaista and you can download your own wheel chart there. I think there is one example over there. You can have a look. So warm thank you also on my behalf.
And this concludes the seminar. Thank you.